This video is brought to you by Hit Point Press and the Fablemaker's Animated Tarot. This beautiful animated tarot deck will add some magical flair to your 5e games. Pre-order at animatedtarot.com. And by our very own Kobold plushie Kickstarter launching on April 12th. Help us to unlock all 6 kobolds with interchangeable accessories. Sign up now at koboldplush.com. Hello and welcome to The Gallant Goblin. Today we are continuing our coverage of Call of the Netherdeep, kindly supplied to us by Wizards of the Coast. You can check out our full review at the eye in the corner of your screen up there. This adventure is available now to purchase, and today we are talking to co-author Sadie Lowry about the finale of the adventure, including some tips on how to run the final 2 chapters, as it may pose a challenge to even seasoned game masters. And coincidentally, Sadie, Grady, and I all wrote adventures for the new supplement Uncaged Goddesses, which just released recently. It contains 21 high-level adventures focused on the goddesses of the D&D pantheon. Sadie's adventure features Mystra, goddess of magic. You can find Uncaged Goddesses at the link below the video. And before we get started here, you should check out A Ghastly Siege by our friends at Beetle and Grimm's. This is a Pathfinder actual play game happening on Friday, March 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. It features 2 of our Queerfinder writers, Richmond and Vanessa Hoskins. And the stream will feature a little preview of Queerfinder issue 2, so you won't want to miss it. Now, this video will contain massive spoilers, so if you're planning to be a player in this adventure, you may need to skip this video and just watch our general review. But hopefully this video will be helpful and informative for GMs planning to run it. So, without further ado, let's welcome Miss Sadie Lowry. Sadie, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's Friday.
It is, and we are coming up here on launch day. We're recording this a little bit ahead of time. How excited are you for this project to finally come out?
So excited. I have been waiting for this for over a year at this point.
When did you start working on it?
I started working on this not last December, but the December before. So what would that be? December 2020?
2020? Wow.
Yeah, I think Joey contacted me in November. We had our first meeting in December. And then as soon as the next year hit, I mean, we were writing like our hands were on fire.
What drew you to the project initially? Like, what excited you about it?
Aside from the fact that it was the first Critical Role adventure, which all in itself is already very cool, I think that it does some really groundbreaking things. And I love that it is a very character-focused, emotionally driven adventure. I think that more than most other adventures I've read, this is about the players and the people in it and about the emotional core that runs through it. And as soon as it was sort of pitched to me, I was like, this is the perfect project for me. I am so into this.
I think, kind of having read through the last couple of adventures that have come out for D&D, this is the one I'm most excited about. This one definitely does feel like it's the most mature adventure in the sense that, you know, it is complex and it is there's a lot of emotions that you have to play with and a lot of trauma. And
yeah.
What was the process like you really had to embody this character of Alyxian and portray him in a variety of different ways. Like, how was that for this big character?
It was interesting. So, spoiler warning for basically a lot of the Netherdeep. So I had the Netherdeep. That was what I chose because I loved the idea when the chapters were pitched to the writers, which at the time it was me, Latia, and Cassandra. And when the chapters were pitched to us, we got to pick what we worked on. And the Netherdeep was pitched as this place that was permeated with emotions. And I pounced on that. I was like, I want that. I want this space that is infused with emotions. And so I really feel like I got to get into Alyxian's head. Perhaps more than the other writers, although I would argue also that we were all in his head every week at our weekly meetings. Like he was so present, but I really had to dig into his emotions, and I find him a very complex, nuanced, intriguing character where it's at the very core of him is a good person. a good person who did the right thing because it was right, but who was exhausted and doubtful and who needed help and who got help, but with every inch of help he got also came immeasurable responsibility. And to have that escalating responsibility and duty and fame and accomplishment and more recognition, and I mean, you can tell he was loved and praised by the gods, but also to have that build and build and build, and then to come to a place of tragedy in which he was forgotten and left. You know that there is a good person in there. You know that there is a person who did what was right even when it was hard. But you think about how those centuries, that all that time of bitterness just crusting over him and making this carcass of defensive protective layers, that's what I really dug into. And you know, when does like regret, like how does regret manifest versus how does feel, like regret is buried in the past, fury is buried in the present. It is so visceral and here and now, and yearning just kind of weaves through all of it and is more ephemeral and strange and intangible. Getting to explore that was the coolest part of writing the Netherdeep, I think.
And just the way you describe it makes me think of like a character from Greek tragedy or like a Homer
Yeah.
epic poem where, you know, entreating with the gods and then having like all this responsibility placed on them. And I think that role playing this character is going to be the primary challenge for the game master of this game, and that's going to kind of make or break it. And so I wanted to see, I was trying to think of, as I was reading through this, if there were any characters from literature or the arts or movies that inspired part of this character that people could maybe watch or read to kind of get in the head a little bit if they're having trouble penetrating into that. Anything that comes to mind, or any other advice you might have for a game master trying to play this character?
That's a great question. That's such a great question. Oh my gosh. I wish I had a really good answer for you. Um, I would look sort of at Greek mythology for the sort of tragedy aspect of it, but also the very heroic aspect of it. You know, I'll tell you a fun fact. A fun fact about this: the name the Apotheon, that he was originally called the Paragon. And we decided that the name, Joey came to us. I think he said the name needed more pizzazz, or it needed to be a little less something that you would hear in other fantasy. So we spent one session brainstorming that, and I came across the word apotheosis. The second definition to that is the elevation of someone to divine status or a deification. And I said that word out loud, and Latia said, well, then we could call him the Apotheon. And so between Latia and I, we sort of renamed him. And that, I think, shaped a lot of his character. That renaming shaped a lot of his character in my mind. He did become very Grecian, very heroic, but also very tragic. In terms of role playing him, it's it's hard, right? And I think part of it has to do with bouncing off of your party, what they respond most to, which isn't helpful. But you know, it's like what is your party sort of keying into? Are they keying into his fury about being forgotten, or is it the tragedy of a life that was so painful and traumatic and long and arduous? Is it the yearning of a simple life that he never got to experience? You know, underneath all of those bristly porcupine layers that are both kind of keeping the characters out but also inviting him in. And that's another important thing about him, I think, is that duality, that he doesn't want the characters to see the hard pain of that. He doesn't want them to see how deeply hurt he is, because he wants to be free, right?
Yeah.
But also there is a part of him that so deeply wants to be known and understood. And that duality is a tension point that I think is important to play and important to try to divulged to the characters. It's underneath all of that. There's a guy who was born under the moon of Ruidus and who was marked as strange and dangerous and ill-omened from the start. He never got the chance to live a normal life. He was born in the calamity. It was horrible from the beginning. He rose to prominence, took on a lot of responsibility, became famous in both good and bad ways, and it did amazing things, but then immediately fell into tragedy. And you have to wonder how much of him just wants peace and catharsis and to be remembered for what he did. And so tapping into those very simple human desires, I think, peels back some of what is so fantastical and mythical and Grecian and when you get into that final fight, monstrous and strange, right?
And he was, yeah, as you say, he was born as a cursed person from the very beginning. And so him having to, he wants to fight back against that fate that was placed upon him. And one other thing you do in the Netherdeep, aside from really showing all his emotional stages and layers, is that you get to show scenes from his life, defining moments. And so I was wondering, kind of, how did you decide which scenes you wanted to show? How did you know, like, what you wanted to share about this character in these scenes? Because it seemed like you had kind of a wide open thing. Like, they're all kind of imaginary, this is your world kind of thing. So how did you develop that?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. So I've had a lot of freedom when it came to the Netherdeep, and that's something that's really cool. And my draft changed, through playtesting and editing, so it's not completely mine. But when it came to what I was writing and the scenes that I was creating, Joey and Matt gave me so much freedom. And actually, that table that you see where it tells you what past visions to give, that was my idea. I wrote up 14 of those, emailed it to Joey and Matt, and said, "Hi, I want to include this. I don't think they get to see enough Alyxian. Let's show more of his life. What do you think?" And Matt's email response to me was, "I freaking love this." And that was early on in the process. And that's when I knew that I had the freedom to really dig into that. And so that shaped a lot of how I designed the dungeon. What I wanted to do in the Netherdeep was really humanize Alyxian, take him from that mythic person that you've heard about into those more human moments. So moments like the ghosts, where you find a family who sheltered him and he feels guilty because you need to help him find their names. I think it's still like that. I don't think that's changed.
It is. No, that's the way
okay,
it is.
Good. I especially in the Grottos of Regret, those are the kinds of moments that I wanted to pull down to, are those human, like, this is a family who loved him and he loved them, and you get to help him work through that. And that's very human. Mm-hmm. And then contrasting that with almost more, like, I got to ask myself, how would these feelings manifest both very literally? This is a literal family, and he literally grieves them, but also more figuratively. How do his emotions manifest figuratively? There's a room. It's not called this anymore. When I turned in the draft, it was called the Eye. And it's a room where this illusory Ruidus just sits there and slowly turns, and it's watching you as you traverse the room. And that's a very figurative, but also literal manifestation of Alyxian's paranoia about Ruidus. It is always watching, it is always present, and it is dangerous if it catches you. So in the Grottos of Regret, I remember taking a very literal approach, like these scenes from his life. What can I capture? His guilt over people that he couldn't save, or his guilt about not really, like, his parents, right? Mm-hmm. And how they protected him, or being aware from the beginning that he was strange and cursed and different, and then juxtaposing that with the events of Fury. these very like tangible but figurative manifestations of his emotions. It was such a fun design challenge. It's I was very purposeful with how I played with those themes. Like there's that I wanted that like childhood room so that you could have that later room that said like let go of childish things and go to war.
Yeah.
Because that's he had to grow up so early, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it was trying to capture those emotions of being, how do I say this? Trying to really capture that feeling of his life being so tragic from the start.
And you
And
did
that,
have, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say you did have that character of Theo, who is, it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily. First of all, thank you for naming him after me. I mean, you didn't have to do that. It was a coincidence, of course, that
I
it
just
was
like you so
an
much.
anagram. It was touching. I saw it in the book, and you left it to be a surprise.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
And
glad you found it.
and luckily, it was an anagram of Apotheon too. So
Mhm.
that also worked out. But it allows you to further explore that kind of the innocence and the childhood maybe he didn't get quite to have further
Yeah.
in the story. He kind of accompanies the characters for a amount of time in there.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that too.
Okay. Okay. This is okay. So around the time that I was writing this, I was playing World of Warcraft. And don't laugh at me.
I played Guild Wars too.
And I was playing through my friend's favorite expansion was Wrath of the Lich King. And so I didn't like World of Warcraft as much as Final Fantasy 14, but I love her. And so I said, I'm going to go play through your favorite expansion. And there is a moment in Wrath of the Lich King in which you fall down a hole and you do something, like someone tells you to go look for something and you grab it, and there's this kind of creepy child that shows up that's like, you shouldn't have done that. And it's a very similar feeling of like, now he knows where you are and he's coming for you. And the quest does not make it clear that this child is the Lich King. That's implied.
Yeah.
And that mystery, I remember frantically messaging Joey and being like, hop on a call with me, please, sometime in the next few days. Please, 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 please. And he did. And I said, this is what I just played in Wrath of the Lich King. And I said, this, I think, would be a really cool thing to work into the Vents of Fury or the whole Netherdeep, but specifically the Vents of Fury. I said, because we can unlock a state in which you are being hunted, quite literally. Because I don't think that happens in Wrath of the Lich King. I don't think something actually comes after you. I could be wrong, though. Don't quote me on that. But
I'm sure somebody will comment in the comment section.
I know someone will take me to task for my lore here. But you unlock a hunter, but also an emotional insight into Alyxian that you wouldn't have had before. And Theo is maybe one of my favorite parts because he is Alyxian's innocence, and he is mysterious, and he's not exactly childlike, which I think makes him interesting. He doesn't come across as a little boy. Mm-hmm. And I tried to leave a lot of interpretation in there for what Theo is. Mm-hmm. Is he Alyxian as a child? Is he a manifestation of the part of him that wants to be good? Is he a manifestation of his guilt? Is he, something that's trying to manipulate the characters further? Is he like the soul of Alyxian? Is he his soul trying so hard to guide the characters to him, knowing, this last sliver of goodness fighting against the crawling influence of the Ruidium and the Netherdeep? Like, that's up to you how you want to play him. But either way, he can give the characters insight into Alyxian's state of mind in certain rooms. Mm-hmm. And why these rooms manifested the way that they did, what they say about him. And I think the ability to play him in whatever way you want, and his ability to make commentary, and his ability to bounce off the characters I think that helps. And his ability to give you an insight into the final fight, which we felt was kind of important. Like if you unlock Theo, Theo tells you you don't need to defeat him, you need to save him.
Yeah.
And that's important going into the final fight. And so like we were all so excited about that idea, this like, okay, you know, you get to unlock this secret part of the dungeon where you get the answer ahead of time, but also you get this kind of nuanced, interesting little spirit to talk to. Like I loved that idea, and I think that the fact that it carried through to the final draft just excites me so much. Well, and he's named after you, which
Yeah.
is probably the best part of him.
That was my favorite part. And I think you did, if I remember correctly, you were able to get in that slightly creepy line of, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I think, wasn't that him when I think they grabbed a spear or something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That is a direct call out. That's a very direct.
I have so many branches I want to go with this. I was going to ask, like, that's there's always a lot of like little things that you as a writer will slip into here that maybe nobody else will notice, but that like you were so happy made it to the final draft. Were there any other little details like that we can share with us that you were just like really wanted to get in there?
Oh gosh.
I can let you ruminate on it for a second while I ask you something else, if that's good.
Yeah. Let's do that.
So one of the really interesting things you're kind of teasing about, like the final battle is not only a battle in the traditional sense, but it's also an opportunity for them to strip away some of his emotional baggage to allow him to be redeemed. And so you have this kind of complex final battle, and the characters in this, the heroes in this story, have a unique role to play as his arbiters. Like he's bringing them in because he doesn't feel like he can pass judgment on himself, that he needs these external observers to come in who are, you know, somewhat unrelated, to see these moments of his life, to see his moments of failure, to see his hopes and dreams, and then he wants them to kind of pass judgment. And a lot of the endings, the various endings you can get, are determined by what the player's judgment of him is. And so I was wondering if you could kind of speak to like trying to tie all these up in the climax of this adventure, these different kinds of battles and this judgment that they have to pass.
Oh gosh. Where do I start?
I know, right? There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. This was hard to design, first of all. Like, let me start right there. Yeah. And even then, even after I went through several rounds with Joey, and then Mackenzie de Armas also jumped in to give us some guidance, to give me some guidance, and she was incredible. And even then, once it got into Wizard's House, it went through some more changes. So this was a toughie. It's a big one. But I mean, you know, new things never come without a lot of work. I loved this idea when we first pitched it. This idea that one, he goes from more monstrous to more human as these forms unfold. I loved that idea. I got to design, so I didn't design what he looked like or anything, but or I didn't design the monsters here, but what I designed was a lot of the emotional beats throughout the fight. If you see, you know, if you read like the dialogue, you know, I was kind of creating the touchstones of like things that he would say, things that you would respond to. And something actually, if you read through the ending the battle, it's something that, this goes back to your previous question, something that I was really excited to see was that the bits of dialogue that I wrote came through. The things like, I have been so cold and so alone. I wrote that. And when I saw that made it through. Again, I don't have like the final version, so I hope that didn't change.
No, I think that's the final thing that he might say if he's defeated, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's
his final words. Yeah.
If you redeem him, he says, my soul is so light.
Yeah.
And I wrote that too. Like getting to try to encapsulate big feelings into simple phrases. That was hard, and something that I loved tackling that as a design challenge.
And I think as a game master, that's the most helpful thing. You know, when we talk about how do you role play this character, how do you embody them? Like when you give the game masters these little bits of tidbits that they can say,
Yeah.
you at least have a starting place. You're like, okay, I can take this, I can riff off of this, and you get it for a lot of the characters. Like all the rivals get those kind of things as well for different parts of the book. So I think that is super helpful for game masters.
Yeah.
So yeah, we love that.
Yeah, and I think that was important, and I'm really glad that that kept carried through because again, this is such a character-heavy adventure, and so you want to make sure that the rivals, Alyxian, like everyone needs to, the game master needs to have a solid grasp
Yeah.
on how to play them in order to be comfortable and successful DMing this adventure. Oh, and not necessarily everyone. Like I think the book tells you, you know, you don't have to play all 5 rivals, but for the adventure to have the impact that it should, you know, grab 1 or 2 or 3 and really help them bond with the characters. And you know, I agree with you. I really think that it was a good idea to keep those and to give that guidance.
Let's talk a little bit about the rivals because there's a lot of stuff this adventure does that's new. And having these rivals be an integral part of this adventure. One thing I always feared about was like, oh God, what if the rivals get killed like in the first chapter or something? I was like, you as a game master, you got to make sure that doesn't happen or find some way to bring them back. But as the rivals can take on so many different roles in this adventure. They can be the heroes of the adventure, where
Yes.
the characters kind of take on a more evil role if they want to, a more selfish role. They can just be close allies. They can, you know, some of the rivals can go one way and some can go another, or they can become kind of the corrupted villains who are, you know, kind of taking a parallel path to a Pathfinder himself, and that they have all these high hopes and adventure, but then they kind of get crushed, like stomped down, and they kind of become resentful and angry themselves, and they kind of become reflections of him, I think. And
Yeah.
so, like, what was it like trying to write these characters who could take on so many different roles in these chapters, especially at the end when they've been through so much already?
Yeah, it was hard, definitely. And in the Netherdeep, I tried not to make any assumptions about what the relationship would be at that point. I tried to focus on how would the Netherdeep interact with these connections. Like the Netherdeep is a living, adjusting thing. It is not a stagnant dungeon. And so my design approach was not, you know, what exactly is Io like right now? How exactly has Dermot changed? It's how does the Netherdeep try to drive more anger between your party and theirs? How does it try to keep you apart, right? If you're close, how does it try to separate you so that you can't be close? If you're already kind of tense or angry, how does it manipulate you so that that deepens further? Because the Netherdeep does not want you to get to Alyxian. The Netherdeep is his protective outer shell. It's his anger, his rage. And as much as he wants to be redeemed, you know, the Netherdeep is a more malicious part of him. And or you know, you could also play it that maybe the Netherdeep wants only the good party to get to him, to free him, right? So if you're evil and the rivals are good, or vice versa, maybe it's literally trying to, you know, encourage one party but hold back the other. And that was interesting to design around, you know. Like there's a, I think, a sidebar or a section in here that gives examples of that, and it's like, you know, Io might tell you that something is one way, and then the Netherdeep quite literally twists itself around to make it seem like she's lying.
Right.
Um, so that was hard, but a really good design challenge. And then, you know, trying to design for what I know in the core that their desires are. Like, no matter how much he has changed, Galsariad always wants knowledge. He wants to learn and push himself. Io wants to prove herself. Dermot wants to help his friends, and that doesn't change.
Yeah.
And so I know that I can push on those specific things. I really like how the book kind of at every stage tells you gives you hints for the 3 stages, like friendly rivals, indifferent rivals, hostile rivals.
Right.
Because that is something that you can build on sort of no matter what the dynamic is. Like whether you're good or bad, that doesn't matter. What matters is, do they hate you?
Right. That's true.
um and so I think it was a really good way personally, and I'm hopeful that people like it, but I think that was a good way to handle it. The book doesn't pretend to know exactly what your dynamic with them is, but it does say if they hate you, there's a good chance that this will happen. If they like you, they're probably going to help. And I love their inclusion. I just love the adventuring party.
It makes me wonder too. Like, I want to hear about people's experiences if they have the luxury of having 5 extra friends who like to play D&D to come in and embody these rivals when they make their appearances. Like, how interesting would it be? Like, you give them the players kind of these, like, this is where they are in the story, and here's how they feel, and like to have real people behind it that are associated with these. I think that could be a lot of fun.
It could be a lot of fun. Yeah. And especially because the rivals are so distinct and so full of character. Like I really like how they not only fill a very good party niche, like you have Maggie the tank and Dermot the healer and Galsariad the utility wizard and Io and Irvin the DPS, which is super easy to understand, right? They're not complicated mechanically, but they're also not complicated. Like the book, I think, hits a very good nuance between them being, they are nuanced characters. They're not one note to me, but they also are easy to understand. Like, okay, Galsariad is the wizard who is seeking knowledge and who is always on the hunt to look and feel and become intelligent, but also there's a lot of doubt because he's coming to this late, and there's a lot of kind of self-doubt there. I love Io, and she's got that careening, cocky bravado of a new group leader who thinks that it is her time to be a hero. And I love that because there's so many ways that can go. But that feeling is easy to capture, right? That drive is, how many of us bring that to D&D in the first place, right? So I love that idea. I love the idea that you could get people to come in and capture the heart of these characters.
I was thinking about it, like the way y'all structured this book, kind of looking at the whole book in total, you could kind of run 2 parallel campaigns because, like when we talk about the kind of the faction chapter that takes place in Ank'Harel before the Netherdeep chapter, it says in there specifically that, the players join one organization, one faction, and the rivals will join another one. And you could have a group running through the track of one faction and then take that other group in separate sessions. And because the missions in there are kind of reflections of this, a lot of the times the same event in different ways. Like, oh, they steal the elephant, they steal it back, all this kind of stuff that happens in there. Like, that could be a really interesting way of running this adventure that I think the way y'all have done it would work.
That's so cool. I love that idea. I love that idea.
I mean, I don't know who of us has like 10 friends that we could bring in for a D&D, but like if you got that in your town.
If you got 10 friends, make it happen.
Yeah, that would be, oh gosh, I need to make more friends.
Well, you could maybe do 9 friends, 4 on one side, 5 on the other.
It would work. It would work.
Maybe.
So let me ask you this too. I know we're running out of time. You got things to do. So a lot of people are just getting their hands on this adventure, maybe today. And they're sitting down, they're reading it, they're getting ready to run it. Do you have advice for game masters, especially because you have that unique perspective of having framed and done the whole ending of the story, of things that they can do early on, things they can focus on, themes or events or characters that would then make that ending pay off even more? Any advice to game masters out there?
Oh gosh. Yes. So I would suggest doing a couple things. I would go through the book and I would read every vision that the book tells you to show of Alyxian. I think there's one at the end. There's one in Bazzoxan that I know of, and I think there's maybe one at the end of the Emerald Grotto. there's a table in chapter 6 of a bunch of visions, and then I would read the final fight. And I would read all the dialogue that comes along with that final fight. And what I would try to do is really shape in your mind, the Alyxian that you want to play. I would then contrast that with your characters, like the characters that your players are bringing to the table. Are they people who have regrets? Are they people who have been hurt and are angry about it? Are they people who have something unfulfilled and they're yearning for something more? And early on in these visions, that like even before you even get to the Netherdeep, I would consider sprinkling extra, like I would consider, so like going through the grottos of regret or the vents of fury or the chasm of yearning, depending on what you think your party will resonate the most with. And I would sprinkle some of those hints in the earlier visions or in extra visions that you place in, because the for me, the heart of Call of the Netherdeep is ultimately that even if you don't agree with where Alyxian has come to, by the time you get to him, you understand. That's the goal. And you want your characters to feel his pain, because them feeling that and understanding that is what makes that final fight dynamic. And I think that's what will get you that satisfying back and forth at the ending. So, I think that understanding the emotional core of your characters and the emotional core of Alyxian and connecting them on whatever threads, wherever they overlap, that's my strongest advice. And like I also recommend making the game as easy to run for yourself as possible by like streamlining what the rivals can do, or not running all 5 if the characters don't bond with all 5, or
Yeah.
But that my biggest my biggest recommendation for game masters is, are they going to resonate with his regret? Are they going to resonate with his anger? Are they going to resonate with his yearning? And start seeding that earlier, even earlier than the Netherdeep.
And there were rooms in the Netherdeep where you asked the characters, the players, to reflect, like, what you show us a scene from your own life that is kind of paralleling, a Apotheon in this moment, And so
Yeah.
you do give that at the end, where the players can kind of, the focus is, on Apotheon a lot, but at the end you give them the opportunity to look at themselves and to kind of see
Yeah.
their own reflection in those mirrors. And so I like the
Yeah.
idea of, like, maybe think about that as you're seeding it in the beginning, and so they have those moments that they can build up to too.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's a good adventure. Man, there's so many ideas now that I have. Did you think of any more of those little Easter eggs or anything that you sprinkled in there that you want to share with us?
What did I sprinkle in? One of the ghost wives, her name is my middle name. Her name is Marissa, and that's my name, and that didn't change.
I think do they call her Marie though? I think they might call her Marie, or is it a different? Is it the 3 ghosts that were?
It is. Did they change her name?
I think it's Marie, Mari.
Oh no, that should be the daughter.
That's a daughter. Okay. Oh, it's one of the. Oh, I'm forgetting the other 2
Mary.
names. Oh, okay.
If the names haven't changed, they are Marissa, Celeste, and something like Mary.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're right.
So that's my middle name.
There you go. You got both of us in there. Congratulations.
Yeah, we are the Netherdeep, Theo.
I mean, I kind of knew it. I could see it in myself. So yeah. At least we're in there together.
Also, I just something I want to say. If I could have one mini from this adventure, it's Alyxian's second form, the one on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
That would be so sick.
There's some pretty good, like, Deva style minis that's kind of along that same lines, but
Yeah.
I wonder. I mean, we haven't heard if they're doing a mini line from WizKids for this. You might know more than we do.
I don't know anything. But my fingers are crossed, like, because there's so many good beasties in here that would make so many good minis.
A lot of underwater creatures. Like, we didn't even talk about the fact that a lot of this part is underwater and how challenging that is to write.
I know. I know. There's so much to talk about with the
There
Netherdeep.
is. It's just a superb adventure. Like, is there anything else that you want to share with us? Anything that you would like? I always ask. I don't think I've asked you this yet. Like, if you're selling this to event, because different groups will want to run different adventures. So this is an adventure for folks who are not afraid to explore some more emotional territory with more complex characters. What other groups do you think would really dig this?
Yeah, very character driven players for sure. Like if your players like to get into the emotional cores of their characters and the NPCs they interact with, perfect adventure for you.
Yeah.
If your group is competitive with other NPCs, but not in a murder way, this is the adventure for you. This is not the adventure for murder hobos, because if you kill the rivals, like, you want a group that enjoys friendly or maybe even hostile competition, but not a group that's going to murder that competition before you get into the meat of it. Let's see. If your group likes horror, a lot of not even just the Netherdeep, but a lot of the dungeon design in here is kind of spooky and eerie and otherworldly.
The hands reaching up and caressing you. Like, they're not trying to drag you, they're caressing you. I thought that was even more creepy in some ways.
Thank you. That was my idea. Thank you. I loved writing that. I just
want to hold your hand. Like, that part. Like, they just want to hold your hand.
Yep. When I was writing that room, I was like, how can I make this as awful as possible? And the answer was not to make them menacing. It was to make them like brush your cheek, and it's like, so if your group likes horror, but it's not like a hacker and slasher, right? It's a very, what's the word for that? I don't even remember. There's a kind of horror that I kind of leaned into for this.
It's kind of dread horror is what I think of it as, where it's just like, it's not like, lots of gore or anything like that. It's just like this creepiness that kind of is everywhere as you're looking around. The little child saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
the eye
exactly.
watching you, all that. It's like, there's something watching me.
Yeah, I agree. Dread horror is a good phrase for it. Let's see, anyone else would enjoy this? That's kind of the few big things for me, but I think everyone should give it a try. Like, it does so many new things, and I think that even if you pick it up and you read through it and you're like, I don't think my group will want to play this, they're the kind of people who would just kill the rivals and move on. I think that it's worth reading because it does things that other adventures haven't done, like the multiple stage fights with the emotional beats, the underwater dungeon at the end, seeing how the group treats rivals. I think that it's a very unique adventure, and it's valuable for that.
I think it's one of the only ones that's come out since Strahd that would really benefit from playing through it multiple times, because there's a lot of different tracks that the players could take. And so it could really benefit from that. So I got one more question for you, and I'll let you go.
Okay, one more question.
Can you tease us with anything you're working on now, or something that's coming out down the road from you? I know it's always a tricky question. There's always NDAs and
buried in NDAs. What am I working on? I want to start working on, I have a couple of ideas for like mini RPGs, like those little design-sized ones, but those are still percolating in my mind. I will say I do have more announcements of stuff I've been working on coming out this year. So even if I can't be super specific right now, I do have some exciting stuff coming up. So stick around.
Yeah, where can people find you and follow you so they can get all the latest scoop?
You can find me on Twitter at the world's most obnoxious handle, and I refuse to change it. It is at incandescent. It is the word incandescent with an A stuck in before the E. You will see my name in the handle, Sadie L. That's how you know you found me. I will change that someday, but today is not that day.
Awesome. Well, Sadie, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on this champion of an adventure. I'm really eager to hear
you.
people's stories from running it. I know that's probably one of the most fun things for you is when the stories start coming from different groups. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll come back and tell us about some of your future stuff too.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun. I love this adventure, and I'm glad I got to talk about it because I love it deeply, and I hope I get to talk to you again sometime.
I hope so too. Yeah, there's so much love in this thing. It just pours out of it. So I am so proud of you for finishing this and coming out with it. And I hope I can run it myself one day. So thank you again.
Please do, and tell me all your stories.
Oh, I will, especially Theo's stories.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sadie.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Sadie for joining us today. You can pick up Call of the Netherdeep right now for an MSRP of $49.95 at your D&D retailer of choice. It's also available on D&D Beyond for $29.99 and on Roll20 for $29.99 as well, though that price may have gone up since its pre-order period. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I am really happy to hear your take on this adventure. Let's discuss. If you're looking for a way to liven up your 5e games, though, check out the Fablemaker's animated tarot deck from our friends at Hit Point Press. Combine this beautiful new deck with the Fablemaker's Tarot Guidebook to enhance your games in many unexpected ways. The guidebook will teach you all about using tarot in your real life, but also how to use these gorgeous cards to inspire your RPG creativity. From creating NPC backstories on the fly to enhancing your PC's motivations and histories and more. With all the character backstories that you're going to be mining in Call of the Netherdeep, this could be a really fun way to enhance and inspire those stories at your table too. The deck comes with 78 fully animated cards with 8 frames of lenticular looping animation each, and the illustrated guidebook is 280 pages long to help you get the most out of your new deck, whether you're using it for personal readings or to spark your creativity in your RPGs or both. Pre-order the Tarot Guidebook, deck, or box set today and get a free PDF of the Fablemaker's Tarot deck and guidebook with your order. Shape your story today at animatedtarot.com. Also, our Kobold plushie Kickstarter is launching on April 12th, 2022. We need your help to be able to unlock all 6 of our Kobold plushies. This is our very first Kickstarter, and we are super proud of our little plushies. I'm biased, but I think these are some of the best plushies out there. They are 10 inches tall, very soft and cuddleable, and they have interchangeable little accessories and clothing options, so you can mix and match to get the exact little Kobold adventurers that you want. And who knows, if our project takes off, we may be able to make even more accessories like weapons and armor, magic items, musical instruments, ranger pets, the works. But to do that, we need your help. Go visit koboldplush.com to sign up to be notified when we launch on April 12th. The first 48 hours are the most important, and we can't do it without you. That's koboldplush.com. And thank you for watching today. Subscribing to our channel and liking our videos here helps us out a lot. Don't forget to check out Uncaged Goddesses at the link below. And come join our Discord server to talk about the latest news and rumors and happenings. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Until next time, stay safe, have fun, love each other, and I'll see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.